Hello everybody, this is Johns Hopkins with Baltimore Heritage. We're back with another of our 5-Minute Histories videos, and today I'm off of Route 50. You might be able to hear that on Maryland's eastern shore, and behind me is one of the barbecue chicken roadside places that seem to pop up in the summertime. It seems that as you're heading over the Bay Bridge from Baltimore at least, you start to see the smoke from the grills pretty much immediately. You can almost smell the chicken almost immediately, and if you're in my car at least, it is almost impossible not to stop at least once going and once coming back. That got my colleague Mary Zajac and I to thinking, what is this thing, this tradition about Eastern Shore roadside barbecue chicken? We did a little digging. I'm not sure that we have all of the answers, but we think right around 1950, three things came together to make this tradition kind of get going. The first was home barbecue grilling. The second was the Bay Bridge, opened in 1952 with literally millions of cars full of chicken eating potential customers coming through. And the third was the chicken of tomorrow. Let's start with barbecuing. Of course, human beings have been grilling meat over open flames for probably about 15 minutes after we learned how to control fire. But the word barbecue really came from the Taino people of the Caribbean. They cooked on wooden structures they called barbacoa. An explorer from Spain in the 1530s borrowed that term, and from there, of course, we get our term barbecue. In America, we've been barbecuing almost from the very beginning. Once we laid the cornerstone of the Capitol building, we had an enormous cookout on the front yard, and we've gone upwards ever since. Really, backyard barbecuing, home barbecuers got their start, or at least a jump start, from Henry Ford, the automaker. He borrowed a concept from a University of Oregon professor who was taking wood shavings and kind of charring them down a little and then turning them into little pellets that he called briquettes. Henry Ford and his colleague Edward Kingsford started using Ford scraps from his auto plant to make those little briquettes, at first selling them under the Ford logo, and then of course today under the Kingsford logo. The briquettes help people control fire so that their steaks didn't get too sizzled, if you will. So the second thing that really went into it was the barbecue grill itself. And that came from a gentleman named George Stephen, who was having a hard time controlling his food from getting charred to a crisp. He went to a relative of his with one of those round nautical buoys, and he said, "Can you cut this in half and then weld legs onto it?" And with that kettle grill, he was able to control his fire with his briquettes to a really higher degree than people had before. That started selling under the name Weber and Stephen, and of course today we just know it as the Weber grill. So there's factor number one. We've got grilling going on the backyard level with briquettes and Weber grills. Factor number two, 1952, the Bay Bridge opens, and instead of cars plodding along by ferry, we have them zipping over to the eastern shore by the millions. 2 years after the first span opened, 1.1 million cars came through. By 1970, 2.2 million cars coming over every year. If you're curious, today, somewhere between 20 and 30 million cars will cross the Bay Bridge. On a good Saturday in the summer, 125,000 alone. That's a lot of cars with a lot of potential chicken eating customers in them. The third component is the chicken itself, the chicken of tomorrow. In World War II, eating chicken was patriotic. Beef and pork were rationed for the soldiers, so people turned to chicken instead. When the war ended, the poultry producers were terrified that people would leave chicken and go back to pork and beef. They came up with an idea. In fact, a gentleman named Howard Price at the Iowa State Agricultural College came up with an idea to work with breeders to come up with a bird that he said would have breast meat so thick you can carve it into steaks. And he called this chicken the chicken of tomorrow. The poultry producers listened, and they worked with breeders and held a contest here in Easton. They picked 40 breeders from 25 states who sent in eggs. They hatched the eggs, and they grew the chickens, and then they ate the chickens, not just for pleasure though. They compared the chickens in things like meatiness and crispiness of skin, and lo and behold, a breeder out of California had a broiler that weighed 4 pounds and tasted great. That was almost twice the weight of the average broiler back before then. And the idea of breeding for a better chicken took off. There was another Chicken of Tomorrow contest, I think in Arkansas, where Tyson Food is located, not coincidentally, but the whole idea really worked. By 1960, the price of chickens was about half of the price that it was back in 1948 when that first contest started. So now we've got folks coming over the Bay Bridge, locals here knowing how to barbecue, and we have the chicken of tomorrow on the grills along the roadside. I'm going to wrap up with one final thing, and that's about the sauce. What about this Eastern barbecue sauce that's going on these chickens? It is a vinegar sauce, vinegar and salt and pepper and some poultry spices like thyme or sage or rosemary. What it doesn't have is sugar. It's not like the Texas sauce with the sweet molasses and mesquite, or the St. Louis barbecue sauce with its tomatoey, tangy flavor. It's really a poultry-based sauce, and without the sugar, a lot of folks consider that the secret. You can marinate it and then cook it on a grill for a long time, an hour and a half, 2 hours on the grill without it charring. And I think that is part of the thing that makes the Eastern Shore chicken barbecue a tradition here, is that it takes so long. Whether you're alone grilling or you're with a group of people, you've got to wake up and prepare the chicken and prepare the marinade, cook it all day, sell it, you got to clean up. It really is, for those of us whizzing along on Route 50, an opportunity to slow down even for just a couple minutes at lunch and be part of this really very Maryland tradition. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.